Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, regardless of where you are. You're welcome to another one of our series of talks about Spiritism. So we are all welcome. We are happy to have you here, and we're also very happy to have our host, Marcelo Neto, who will be leading a talk on the theme God within us. Marcelo, welcome.
Thank you very much, Glaucio. Thank you, each and every one that are joining us this morning. It's a great pleasure to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
Oh, it's always, likewise, we're so happy. And before we formally introduce you and formally start the lecture, we have some announcements to share. So there's a new podcast series. It's a podcast like series offered by the U.S. Spiritist Federation. It's called Psychology and Spirituality: A Bridge to a Better Life, and it's based on the works by Joanna De Angelis. There is a new episode every Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. It's basically those are weekly talks, and again based on the works by Joanna De Angelis, and they offer a safe place to confront, compare, correlate, and expand spirituality concepts from a psychological lens, bringing insights, actionable tips, and real-world advice to help you lead a better life. You can subscribe to receive notifications of new episodes at USS, United States Spiritist Federation YouTube channel. Also, coming up in September, on September 30th, in Portland, we're going to have our 17th US Spiritist Symposium. And the theme for this year will be Spiritual Path to Mental Balance. So basically, the symposium will focus on this topic. It is going to be a full day program, and it's going to include talks, panels, QA sessions, youth panel, kids and youth activities. So make sure you save the date. On the screen here, there is going to be a QR code. So if you want to help the US Spiritist Federation produce more publications and promote Spiritism to everyone, you can scan the QR code on screen for your donation. Back to Marcelo. Marcelo, it's good again to have you with us today. And also, again, welcome. It's good to have everybody who's watching us live or who's watching the recording. And it's a very interesting topic, God within us. So we're all very eager to hear about it. And I've known you for a while, and you've always been a busy guy. So just to talk very briefly about you, so you have a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering, and Marcelo is currently the president of the Spiritist Federation of Florida, and you're also the president of Leal and Fab Publisher, and you're also the vice president of the Conscious Living Spiritist Group in Florida. So just as a reminder that during Marcelo's lecture, feel free to post your questions, your comments, and there will be a Q&A session in the end, and you're going to have an opportunity to hear comments and answers and any additional information that you might request about our lecture, and Marcelo will provide that information. All right, Marcelo. Without any further ado, I'm eager to hear about this very important topic.
Thank you very much. Thank you very, very much once again to all that join us this morning. Because as Glaucio mentioned, this talk will be recorded. And so good morning, good afternoon, good evening for the ones that are going to watch later on. Well, God within us. I brought a poem, message channeled by the spirit Rabindranath Tagore, psychographed by Divaldo Franco. And for those who doesn't know who is Rabindranath Tagore, He was a Nobel Prize in Literature in India, right in the beginning of the 20th century. When he passed away, his spirit communicates with Divaldo Franco, bringing a message that we might relate to ourselves in this constant search for the divine. Let's pay attention to the message that the Spirit brought us through the mediumship of Divaldo Franco. I look for you, confused and sad, throughout distant lands, in wild adventures with others, unable to find you. Wherever my anxiety led me, I would come upon the marks of your feet on the ground. I covered my dreams in an anguish that crushed all my ambitions in my hopeless attempts to find you. I wore myself out with no happy ending, and I gave up defeated. One day, I came upon 2 stars losing their glimmer in the eyes of an abandoned child. The child's voice, without words, and the melody of its needs, they made me find these are the trees. 3, my neighbor, myself, and thee, O sovereign Lord of my life. Do not stop singing, O gentle breeze that strolls through the valley. Do not halt your journey, O transparent water of the stream. All the music that sings its lullaby to nature becomes music for the singer to unlock the voice from his throat and flood the entire world with harmonies. Rabindranath Tagore, through the mediumship of Divaldo Pereira Franco. This is really interesting because Tagore shows us maybe a reflection of the search that we all are trying to find the divine outside, going through an immense number of experiences, trying to find pleasure. In the trying to find pleasure, we are trying to search God. That's why when he mentioned to us, when it says like, I look for you, for God, for the divinity, for something that transcends, confused and sad throughout distant lands in wild adventures with others, unable to find the divine. And bringing us this level of anxiety that led us sometimes so without energy, with a lot of anguish, trying to find outside something that it's already residing inside of our hearts. And through the mediumship of Divaldo Franco and through this poem of Rabindranath Tagore, we see when this individual that finds the other, he also finds himself. And finding himself in the image on this analogy of the other, he found God. And this is maybe the key ingredient. Maybe it's not the correct word, ingredient. Maybe this is the most important thing that we all in humanity are trying to find. Sometimes in all these pleasures and going through all these different positions and different lives, too many reincarnations, still trying to find outside with everything related to materialistic ideas and pleasures, the divine, that it's waiting to be awakened inside of each and every one of us. There's one message in the posthumous work by Allan Kardec that brought a message that was received in Paris on April 25th, 1866. And this message was brought by two mediums. Kardec didn't give us the name of the mediums. He just put the initials, Mrs. M and Mrs. T. In a somnambulistic state, they brought a message that it's called Regeneration of Humanity. It's a very long message, and I brought here just a few portions of this message that shows maybe the moment that we are experiencing nowadays. In this message, the portion that I extract and I compile and put in the slides that in the slide that I'm going to show you, it might be reflecting the moments that we are experiencing right in the 21st century, when we see the number of suicides, even among children, in this maybe lack of fulfillment, something that can fulfill our empty hearts, trying to maybe find outside, as Rabindranath Tagore mentioned to us, something outside, just like the salt water. More we drink, more we feel thirsty. Trying to find outside what it needs to be found inside of our hearts. And the message tells us exactly this. Unfortunately, disregarding God's voice, the majority will persist in their blindness, and through dreadful struggles, their resistance will mark the end of their reign. In their distraction, they will rush to their own doom. They will cause devastation that will engender countless flagellations and calamities, such that, without meaning to, they will hasten the advent of the era of renewal. And I put in highlight, and as if the destruction were not occurring fast enough, suicides will increase in incredible proportions, even among children. Insanity will have never affected such a huge number of men and women who, even before they die, will be scratched from the number of the living. Such are the real signs of times, and the chain of events will fulfill all, as we have stated, without the least derogation from the laws of nature. This is something really that puts us to think, give us maybe a wake-up call. And if we can do this correlation with the previous message of Rabindranath Tagore, we see that we might be failing with this inner duty that we all have to fulfill. This duty towards ourselves, creatures of God, of the Almighty, and duty towards the others. There's a message on chapter 17 on the Gospel according to Spiritism, brought by the spirit Lazarus. This message was received in Paris in 1863, that brings pretty much the duty that we have towards the other, towards ourselves, this individual moral obligation, as Lazarus says, first toward ourselves and then towards the other. This law of life, this is words of Lazarus, that it's found in the smallest details as well in the most elevated acts of the creature, of the human creature. And this is something really that might be, when we read the message, we see that we might be lacking on this duty towards our conscience. And that's why maybe trying to find ourselves outside with pleasure, trying to find the divinity outside, we lack in this inner journey to find God within, God inside of our hearts. We have to think about it. Allan Kardec once asked the good spirits, how can this beautiful body of knowledge that we call Spiritism can contribute with the progress of humanity? Because especially nowadays when we see rules, government laws, forms of us to conduct ourselves inside of society, we see, even though we declare ourselves as spiritualistic people, spiritists in our case, we still move among the waves of the world, among our society, as this life is the only life that we have. We still have very much materialistic ideas, even though we declare ourselves spiritualistic, spiritual beings. And that's why Allan Kardec, on the question 799, bring us the question: in what way can Spiritism contribute to progress? And the answer is by destroying materialism, one of the sources of society. It enables people to comprehend where their true interests lie. Since the future life is no longer veiled by doubt, men and women will better understand that they can ensure their future based on the present, destroying the prejudice of sect, caste, and color. Spiritism teaches them about the great solidarity that must unite them as brothers and sisters. This is so profound, and that's why Spiritism brings us this idea, this reality. In fact, it's not an idea, a reality that we are immortal beings going through so many journeys in this infinite life. We were created simple and ignorant, but we are going through all these processes of many, many lives, acquiring the importance to be aware, awakening our conscience, and instead of looking with pleasures outside, trying to find within the connection with the Almighty. There's one book that I truly and greatly recommend, The Great Enigma by Leon Denis. And on the first chapter, we see God and the universe. It's really interesting because it brings us a few ideas that invite us to think. And I'm going to share with you all these slides so we can read together and reflect. The Great Enigma, God and the Universe, Chapter 1, brings this. Is there a purpose, a law in the universe? Or is the universe only an abyss where thought is lost for want of a point of support? Let's remember the previous slides that we read, the number of suicides, people with empty hearts, with dissatisfaction, trying to find pleasure outside, as if this is the only life that we have. And if we don't fulfill our momentary pleasures, suicide, anxiety, anguish takes over the spirit of humanity, and we see the number of suicides, even among children, rising when we see the statistics rising in such a number that put us to think, invite us to think it's missing something. So repeating what I just read, is there a purpose in life, a law in the universe? Or is the universe only an abyss where thought is lost for want of a point of support? Is there a force, a hope, a certainty that can lift us above ourselves towards a loftier purpose, toward a principle, a being in which the good, truth, and wisdom are identified? Or might there be within us and all around us only doubt, uncertainty, and darkness? Human beings, as thinkers, probe the vast expanse. They interrogate the depths of the heavens. They seek the solution to two major problems: the problem of the world and the problem of life. They ponder that majestic universe in which they feel engulfed. And if we keep reading, we're going to see on the same book, on chapter 5, the necessity of, let me put it over here, the necessity of the idea of God. Chapter 5, same book. Be courageous. That's an invitation. Take this book, read these chapters, and you will see maybe yourself finding the answers that we are always been looking for, and reading it together with you. It says, it asserts and imposes itself outside and above all systems, all philosophies, all beliefs. God is above all systems, all philosophies, all beliefs. Therefore, we give ourselves to this study, free from attachment to any religion, in the absolute independence of our thought and our conscience. For God is greater than all theories and systems. That is why we cannot be affected, or that's why I should put in capital letters, the H. That is why God cannot be affected or diminished by the errors and wrongs that human beings have committed in his name. God hovers above everything. God is above all denominations. And if we can call him God, it is for want of a greater name, as Victor Hugo once said. And he keeps saying on the next slide, the God question is the most serious of all the problems hanging over our heads. And its solution, it's tightly and imperiously tied to the problem of human beings and their destiny, to the problem of the individual life and to societal life. The knowledge of the truth about God, about the world and life, is what is most essential, most necessary, for that is what supports us, inspires us, and guides us, even without our awareness of it. And this is truth. This truth is not inaccessible, as we shall see. It is simple and clear. It is within the reach of all, and all one has to do is search for it without prejudice, without bias, with the aid of consciousness and reason. When I read this page long ago, when I extract this little portion of this chapter number 5 and present it to you guys, I says like, oh my God, this is tremendously profound. And we all know that not all spirits are equally able to deal with these questions. Of course, We know even the spirits beyond the grave, sometimes they manifest in our mediumistic meetings with still lack of understanding, lack of knowing what is God is. We see some spirits still looking for revenge, still looking for this promised land, even though on this terrestrial life that we have, on this incarnated moment that we experience, they did not did what exactly needs to be done. If we go back to the duty, this moral obligation that we have towards the other, towards ourselves, even those simply repeating the name of God and believing in some kind of religion, they think they're automatically, when they pass through this stage of life, incarnated to the other realms of life, they will find all the answers. We know that it's not simple like that. It takes time for us to be awakened to the reality of the immortal spirit. And that's why we have so many divisions in humanity, too many feuds, people believing in God in the different aspects. Sometimes we try to create this God with a human image, sitting on the top of a cloud and a throne with preferable people, and putting another one in total disgrace. We design heaven and hell as they are like completely apart, as the divine mercy, it's not subject to be reaching out each and every one in this universe. We don't understand this sublime, I wouldn't say being, because God is not a being. God is. He's eternal. He's eternal. But even though when we don't know, when we don't have all the answers, even though when we still are very attached to the materialistic ideas and we cannot conceive God, because it's more like an emotional experience rather than an intellectual one, we might be asking, where may we find proof of the existence of God? And Allan Kardec brought this question on number 4, and the answer is in the axiom you apply to all your science. There's no effect without a cause. If you would search for the cause of whatever is not the work of human beings, then reason will answer your question. To believe in God, we need only to behold the works of creation. The universe exists. Therefore, it must have a cause. To doubt God's existence would be to deny that every effect has a cause, and to believe that something could have resulted from nothingness. And it's something very obvious. Everything has an initial point, a starting point. If we see, for example, our solar system, the Earth rotates around its own axis in an approximate speed of 1,700 kilometers an hour. The same planet Earth revolves around the sun in a speed of approximately 107,000 kilometers an hour. And the same sun, the whole complex, the whole solar system, travels and moves within the Milky Way at a speed of a little less than 800 kilometers an hour. And our galaxy travels and moves around another bigger galaxy, everything following laws that we try to understand in such a perfection, in such a harmony, even within our bodies. This octrillions number of this trillions of number of cells, everything producing the hormones in the perfect performing, it's gotta be something controlling, regulating. Who creates this? I cannot believe that nothing creates something so complex and with such harmony. Impossible. We might say, this is something, the idea of God, it might be something related to some social, it's something social. We are taught by our parents that God exists, so we simply pass it on that God exists. This is something much more a culture than actually a belief. But Allan Kardec asked another question to the good spirits, because he also thought about that. This is something more like this is something like more cultural, or it's an inner sentiment. It's an intuitive sentiment that we have, the existence of God. And on question number 5, he brought us exactly the same question. All human beings have within them the intuitive sentiment of God's existence. What can we conclude from this? And the Spirit brought us that God exists. Otherwise, where would such a sentiment come from if it were not based on something real? This applies the principle that there is no effect without a cause. And he asked another question. Mightn't our inner sentiment about the existence of God be the result of education and the product of acquired ideas? If that were the case, why would members of your primitive cultures have this intuition? And that's true. If the sentiment of existence of a supreme being were only the product of education, it would not be universal. Like all scientific ideas, it would only exist in the minds of those who received such education. But we still don't understand God. But we see that even though in tribes very far away from what we think it's like it was a social thing, an educational process, even in this very primitive places, we see tribes with this inner sentiment that there is something and a power way beyond their capacity to understand. I know that sometimes they relate this with the thunder, with the clouds, with the whatever the case may be, but they believe there's something much bigger than their capacity to understand. And this is something that also Kardec asked on questions 5 and 6, as we see on the slides over here, that this inner sentiment, this intuitive sentiment of the existence of God, it's not something simply social or education, something that comes from education process, a product of acquired ideas. No, not at all. It is our inner sentiment. We, on the Spirit's book, right in the beginning, on the attributes of the divinity, on question number 10, Kardec asked, can human beings fathom God's innermost nature? Not yet. Not yet. No, the Spirit's answer. They lack the aptitude to comprehend it. And that's true. And that's true. We still lack in this aptitude of comprehension because we are pretty much linked to the material. Even though we are spiritists, spiritualistic people, we are still very attached to the materialistic ideas on this world, in the stage of evolution that we all find ourselves in. But there is a providence, this God with the providence that embraces each and every single creature of the universe. And we're going to bring and we're going to see on this book, Genesis, compiled, written by Allan Kardec, something that it's really important for us to read together on chapter 2, item number 20, that says this information about providence. In the chapter, it's God, and the sub-item is providence. Providence is God's care for all creatures. God is everywhere, sees everything, and presides over everything, even the very smallest things. This is what providential action consists of. How is it that God, so great, so powerful, so superior to everything, can get involved in the tiniest detail and be concerned with the smallest act and thoughts of each individual? This is a question that we can think about. Like this question, such is the question, and I'm going to read just a little bit of this portion of the Genesis, this chapter that it's called chapter 2, that calls God. It says that such a question, I'm reading straight from the book, such is the question that unbelievers ask themselves, from which they conclude that even if they were to believe in the existence of God, God's action would extend only to the general laws of the universe, and that the universe has functioned throughout eternity by virtue of those laws, to which all creatures are subject in their sphere of activity, without there being any need for the incessant support of providence. And if we go to the item number 21 of the same chapter, the book, the Genesis of Allan Kardec, in their current little evolved state, humans can comprehend the infinite God only with difficulty. Since we are bound and limited, we imagine God to be bound and limited. We picture God as a circumscribed being and create an image after their own. The pictures we paint of a God with human traits have contributed in no small way to maintaining such error with the minds of the masses who worship God more in the form than in thought. Kardec keeps saying, I would say that for most of humanity, God is a powerful sovereign. Well, Kardec keeps saying, like, for most of humanity, God is a powerful sovereign on an accessible throne, lost in the immensity of heavens. And because our faculties and perceptions are limited, we cannot understand that God could intervene or deign to intervene directly in small matters. But that's why that on the same chapter on item 22, we're going to see this. And let's read it together. Let's imagine a fluid, subtle enough to penetrate all objects. Being an intelligent, this fluid acts mechanically by material forces alone. However, if we imagine this fluid to be endowed with intelligence, perception, and sensitivity, it no longer acts blindly, but with discernment, will, and freedom. It sees, understands, and feels. The properties on the item 23, he says, the properties of the perispiritual fluid can give us an idea of this. This fluid is not intelligent per se, since it is matter, but it is the spirit's vehicle for thought, sensation, and perceptions. The next slide on the same chapter 2 that calls providence, we see that Whether or not this happens with God's thought, that is, whether it acts directly or through the intermediary of fluid, in order to make it easier for us to understand, let us represent it under the concrete form of an intelligent fluid filling the infinite universe and penetrating every part of creation. The whole of nature is immersed in the divine fluid. Thus, by virtue of the principle that the parts of a whole are of the same nature and have the same properties as the whole itself, then, since each atom of this fluid, if we may so explain it, possesses thought, that is, the essential attributes of divinity, and since this fluid is everywhere, then everything is subject to its intelligent action, its foresight, and its solicitude. And keep saying, there is not one being, no matter how minuscule it may be, that it's not in some way saturated with this fluid. Hence, we are constantly in the presence of the divinity. There is not one of our actions that we may hide from its gaze. Our thought is in constant contact with its thought. And it is correct to say that God reads the deepest folds of our minds. That's why we see in John chapter 4, verse 13, when he states, we are in God just as God is in us, according to Christ. This is beautiful because we are immersed in this infinite universe and this very subtle fluid that we are immersed just like fish in an infinite aquarium. And this fluid interpenetrate in every single and minuscule part of every small part of us, as if there's like terminals from the God's presence, understanding everything, controlling, guiding, with providence, with care, with loving. That's why when we pray, we don't need to say out loud with a trumpet. Sometimes in the middle of our hearts, alone, in silence, our thoughts are being listened by God, because He is not only outside, He is inside of us. He is everywhere, everywhere. Keep going. The extent kindness over all creatures. God does not have to look down from the heights of the immensity to be heard by God. Our prayers do not have to cross through space, nor do they have to be spoken with a resounding voice. Since God being constantly at our side, our thoughts resound with God. Beautiful. We are immersed in this infinite with the mercy, with the solicitude, with the caring of the Almighty. Also, on the next slides, on the Spirit's book, the attributes of divinity. One day, and Kardec asked, will we ever be able to fathom the mystery of divinity? One day are going to comprehend, to understand the Almighty. And the spirits bring us something that this is the objective of each one of us. When their spirits are no longer, when our spirits are no longer eclipsed by matter, and when they have finally purified themselves enough to be able to approach God, then they will see and comprehend God. the inferior nature of their faculties makes it impossible for human beings to fathom God's innermost nature. While humanity is in its infancy, people often confuse God with God's creature, imputing to God their own imperfections. However, they ponder the nature of things more deeply as their moral sense develops, and thus they acquire a truer, thought always incomplete, idea of God that conforms more to reason. Maybe that's why we can see on the Gospel of Matthew, when he brings on chapter 5, on the Sermon of the Mount, on the Beatitudes, blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Showing us that one day after life, we're going to acquire this sense of belonging to something that is truly profound, it's truly meaningful, and we are going to understand our divine DNA, our divine filiation with the Creator. Maybe that's why Jesus wasted no time teaching us the Lord's Prayer, this heartfelt conversation that we can all, children of God, can have with our Father, allowing these invisible walls to simply disappear, presenting us with our divine essence, with divine filiation. That's why he began our Father, Father of the whole creation of the universe, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive our debts as we forgive our debtors. Lead us not into temptation, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. I'm just repeating a portion of the Lord's Prayer. And I want to go, I don't want to go into the Lord's Prayer because this is not the subject, but it brings us this divine prayer when Jesus teaches, bringing us something extremely profound. Allan Kardec states this Lord's Prayer is the most perfect model of conciseness, a true masterwork, in the words of Kardec, of sublimity in its beautiful simplicity. It summarizes the Lord's Prayer, the duties that we have towards the other, towards ourselves, towards the Creator, and entails us a profession of faith, an act of submission to this infinite love that embraces each and every one of us. Because even with the most ferocious, the most mean individuals, God is there, waiting for the seeds of love that are entrusted to that creature to be flourished, to be awakened, and one day, life, after the pain strikes us and shakes us, all the dust that still holds us back in this infinite road of evolution, showing us that we are creatures of God, waiting to be more conscious and to be more pure. Blessed are the pure in hearts, with all the materialistic ideas not being part of the way that we think, even though we are on earth, even though we are incarnated, we live on earth incarnated, but we don't belong to this earth, because our inner world is being built stone by stone, life after life within, and we will find this God that we, as Rabindranath Tagore looking outside in distant lands, trying to find with pleasure, not anymore, but trying to find God within our hearts. And we are going to repeat one day, not only repeating the words with this true sense of belonging, our Father, who art in heaven, our Father, the whole creation, the whole humanity. Well, I hope I can clarify a few things. I know sometimes I got very emotional reading the slides and trying to share with you the sentiment that one day shake me to the core and showing me that we are not alone. We have a Father. We have someone that created us, and He has a plan for each and every one of us. Let's try to resume, if I can use this word, all the reincarnations and try to jump a little bit, be more audacious, more courageous, in trying not to win outside, but to win the obstacles that still resides inside of us, so this beautiful encounter with the Creator can be realized as soon as possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Marcelo. Very interesting lecture, very insightful. I love the poems by Tagore, very inspiring. And we have some questions that we'd like to share with you and get some additional, so that we can get some additional insights. So here's the first one that came from the U.S. Spiritist Federation. We find in the basic books many instances where we are told God punishes if we deviate from the divine law. What is the meaning of that? How does God punishes us?
This is a language that was used back in those times in the 19. God doesn't punish us. Our conscience punishes because we have this divine law inscripted inside of each and every one of us. We were created for love. Every time that we deviate from this law, sooner or later, we are going to be punished, not by God, by this law that God creates and regulates and rules the whole universe. Which law is this? The law of love. If we are apart from this law, it's not God that is going to come and says, like, I'm going to punish you. This is just the language that we use on the 19th century. That's why the importance for us to study these questions in this book together. Maybe we can clarify questions like that. Putting maybe God as someone with preferences, with still like, no, I don't like you, I'm going to punish for the rest of the eternity. No, it's this law that we have inside, the law of love. It's written in our conscience. This is on question 621. Where is God's law written? And the answer is in our conscience. Whenever we deviate from this law, we're going to be punished by the consequences of our acts. Could be this life, could be the next one.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing that up, more about consequences, actually, and cause and effect. Next question, also from the U.S. Spiritist Federation. There are some religions in the world. Several of them either do not recognize God or worship several gods. Would it be possible for those alternate belief systems to also be on the right path towards God?
Well, in the comments of the question 654, the spirits answer, all are brothers and sisters, children of the same God, and God calls all those who follow divinely established laws, whatever may be the form in which they express themselves, showing us that maybe our interpretation could be different from the others, But God is much bigger than this, our limited way of thinking how he is. Let me read the question again. There are some religions in the world, several of them, either not to recognize God or worship several gods. Would it be possible for those alternative belief systems to also be on the right path? Well, it's the intention. What is the intention that we have? So I mentioned question 654, and that's right. All brothers and sisters, children of the same God, and God calls, it's over here. It's over here. I brought the Spirit's book over here just in case, I fail and I forget something. We're going to find like so many questions, so many answers over here. 654, if I'm not mistaken. Does God have any preference for those who worship in this or that manner? God prefers those who sincerely worship from the bottom of their heart, doing good and avoiding evil, to those who think they honor God through ceremonies that do not render them any better than their neighbor. All are brothers and sisters, children of the same God, and God call all those who follow the divinely established laws, whatever may be the form in which they express themselves. I don't know if I answered the question or maybe I got you guys more confused, but it's pretty much, it's a very long answer. There's a few comments from Kardec. I would say I would recommend you read the question 654. It's on chapter, the Spirit's book, Outward Worship Forms. Maybe you're going to find your answer. So the sentiment, the sincerity that you have for doing the good. And of course, we have so many forms of understanding. I guess I mentioned on the lecture that we not all have the same level of understanding, of evolution, of interpretation. I'm not putting the Spiritists like in a higher position, not at all, because I know people that doesn't know a thing about Spiritism with much more moral, much more love than many Spiritists that I know, much more than me. I'm going to include myself. I don't know if it makes sense. And they don't believe, they don't understand pretty much. But it's much more like an emotional experience, feeling they're belonging to something much greater. And even though they're very well attached to some formalities, ceremonies, and stuff, they have this inner sentiment of doing good, of providing good to others. It's the duty. Lazarus, chapter 17 of the Gospel of Spirit according to Spiritism, on item 7, I guess I mentioned something about that. We have a moral obligation towards others. Even though I don't understand pretty much how these two realms of life, Spiritism manifest, mediumship, reincarnations, am I being confused? Trying maybe to put you guys more in
No,
order?
actually, no. This is very clear. I'm enjoying your explanation. Very interesting.
Okay,
You're right. I think you're right on.
Okay, well, thank you.
We have a next question for you.
Mm-hmm.
Some from Spiritist Network, actually from U.S. Spiritist Federation, from the Spiritist Network. Some people question on how can there be a God when there is so much evil and suffering in the world?
This is a very materialistic idea and thinking that we have only one lifetime. See, when we open our eyes, not the eyes of flesh, a material body, when we see, and especially in Spiritism, when we see we have so many lives, and this is just a fraction of our existence. And of course, God is an educator. Sometimes suffering is happening. It's happening. Let me read it's over here, the question. Why do you
It's on the screen, yes.
It's okay, okay. So God is an educator, a father. And as the father, we learn that what we call punishments, evil, problems are consequences of our acts. And of course, we are living in a world of trial and expiations. We built this world long ago, and now we are suffering the consequences. And the law of progress, the law of destruction, are going to teach us that the progress is it's happening. We are evolving, and then this world is being destructed sometimes by us, so we can learn, because we are immortal spirits. Only the body dies, the spirit keeps living on, and we will understand one day, with the harm that they did, they will not going to be happy. So let me see if I can make myself a little more clear. Let's try to not make this analysis based on only one lifetime. Some people, I had a conversation with my nephew a year ago relating something like that, because he pretty much asked me exactly the same question. He's not a spiritist. I was in Brazil, and he mentions like, oh, uncle, tell me about this God, the God that you believe, because there's so much evil on earth. I see religions. I see the wars that was caused by religious groups, trying to bring this God with so revenge, with preferable people. Why this happened? So I don't believe in God. He was 18 years old. And I thought, oh my God, who told you that? And then, the preaching starts, blah, 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 blah. It says like, we have so many lifetimes, my dear nephew. So many lifetimes. We're making your analysis in a span of like 2,000 years, maybe 1,000 years, maybe 3,000 years. But this is just a fraction, because the spirit will live on. If we go through immortality, one day we were created simple with ignorance. We're ignorant, with no knowledge. And of course, we're going to promote like acts. They're going to result in consequences to us. And all these consequences one day is going to shake us up and to make us understand through pain that it's no longer belongs to us. Yes, we see a lot of suffering in the world. We see it's still a lot of wars. Who could imagine like a war in the magnitude of Ukraine and Russia in this beginning of the 21st century? It's something so unacceptable. But this is only one war, because there are several wars among the world. Why? If we have a materialistic idea, a vision of only one lifetime, of course, we got despair, we got with a lot of anxiety, but it's just a second, a fraction of this infinite time. I know, Gloss, you're an engineer, and limits. Limits, when you start like here, there's a limit. One day, we're going to be shaking up. It's just like, no more pain, no more. We will understand that only through love, this love that is inscripted inside of our hearts and our conscience, will be awakened just like a seed being carried, being nourished by us, understanding that one day the face of the earth will be no longer a world of trials and expiration. We are in this transition process, a regeneration world that's going to come. It's not going to be like one specific date. It's not going to be tomorrow, after tomorrow. It's a process. It takes time, because God respects the free will of each and every one of us. So let's be patient. Let's be the change. I'm just repeating a word of Gandhi. Let's be the change that we want to see outside. It might be not make a difference in a bigger scale, but I'm assure you, in our hearts, you're going to feel, I'm going to feel a peace that it's so profound, and little by little, we are transforming the world. Oh, I hope I can.
It was very interesting. It is interesting. Only an engineer would bring calculus to explain God within us.
Exactly.
Marcelo, we have one last question for you.
Mhm.
Hi, Marcelo. This is from our friend Yasko Aracava. Hi, Marcelo. The search for God seems very intangible in many instances, and not all our prayers cause same reactions on us. Is God within us differently sensed as to God's presence with us? If different, how to sense and develop one or the other for our betterment? Same tips? Thank you. Some tips. Thank you.
God is always present, always, even though you don't know how to pray, even though we are in a very distressed moment of our life, even though because we have a lot of fraternal assistance conversation and people says like, Marcelo, I don't have the strength to pray. I don't know how to connect with God. I see someone like praying with heartily, fervent, heartily emotions, and I see sometimes tears like falling from their faces. I don't have this connection. Is God listening to us? Of course, He is. Little by little, because this is a process. God always is there, even if we think He is not there. Even if we think our connection with the Creator it's not so profound. Be patient. Little by little, you will acquire to make silence, inner silence, and making this inner silence times without words, simply with a sentiment of feelings and wishing to be connected with the Almighty. You will answer His voice even in inarticulate words, because sometimes the God's answer it's not immediate, because we still think we are doing some kind of bargain with God. I'm asking, I'm praying fervently, but God is not listening to me, because the time of God is different than the time of us. We need sometimes pains, struggles, anxieties, since God is an educator, we need sometimes to think about why it's taking so long for Him to answer me. It's got to be an answer. And always there's an answer, even though the answer is not the one that we are expecting. Because as I mentioned on the Genesis, on Providence, I mentioned like the Great Enigma, I mentioned this book, The Genesis, we will see this fluid that interpenetrates even the smallest thing in the universe. And we don't have to scream, we don't have to be super connected. We have to feel that He is there. And little by little, this connection are going to be awakened, and we are going to be more aware that even on my unanswered prayers, He is answering me. Unanswered in the ways that I'm trying to receive an answer, He is there. I don't know, Yasko, if it makes sense for you. Part of my limitations, the way that I can try to explain, but be patient. Be patient. My tip is give us like some tips, if different, how to sense and develop one or the other for our betterment. Be patient. Do your portion. Do your part. Be a better person. I know you are. Be a better person. Do good. Keep doing what you're doing. Much better with trying to perfect what you're doing with sentiment, with feelings. And I'm sure, let's remember question 459, the good spirits are going to surround us, are going to influence you, are going to guide you, are going to promote you some goodness, even though if this goodness is not the way that we expect. Be someone making the difference in humanity. We need more people like this. Even though the world is a mess at this time, it looks like a mess, just like a big construction, a reform. When we reform our houses, like a mess, dust everywhere. But it's going to look nice. It's going to look beautiful. It's not me that I'm promising. It's Jesus that promised to us.
Thank you, Marcelo. Thank you very much and thank you for such an interesting explanation, very enlightening. Thank you for everyone who attended our live this morning, and also those who are going to be watching at a later time and enjoy this very interesting explanation. Stay tuned for additional presentations next week. Again, we will continue our series of lectures. This time we're going to have Marco Magalhães. He's going to be explaining the topic spiritual and physical pathogenesis of diseases. Spiritual and physical pathogenesis of diseases. Very interesting topic as well, and very applicable for our lives. Excellent. Marcelo, thank you again. Could you be so kind to say the final prayer for us?
Yes, of course. Dear Father above, we thank you so much for the opportunity that we had over here at this moment. You know, dear Father, that we don't have the right words sometimes to explain how grateful we are for everything that you give us since the beginning of times. We are still like going through baby steps, trying to understand the love that you deliver to the whole universe. And even though we don't understand, we are immersed in this infinite love. Help us to be more aware of the love that surrounds us. Help us to be someone that makes a difference in the world, not because we want to look good, but because this is the key of happiness. Understanding that blessed are the pure in heart, because one day we're going to be seeing you not with a material vision, but from the eyes of the heart, feeling a true connection, creature and creator, united in such a unison, music and sound that will promote harmony to this world that so much needs love, as your Son, Jesus Christ, once mentioned. Blessed are the pure in heart, for one day we shall see God. Thank you very much, and so be it.